Oh, you did not shoot that green shit at me. Welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. I'm Liam, this is Rob, and you're listening to the Independence Day podcast. I look back at one of the biggest movies of all time and arguably the most visually stunning movie of its day. It's a movie that I've always had a soft spot for, but Rob doesn't like Will Smith. I mean, come on, man. Who doesn't like Will Smith? Absolute madness.
He's not a good actor. I don't like Will Smith. I don't like Tom Cruise. I don't like any film that you say that he's been in. I've not been a huge fan of. But I will caveat, I do enjoy this film. I feel that the bits without Will Smith are better. It should have just been old Jeff Goldblum.
I mean, I disagree on so many. The thing is, use Tom Cruise as an example. I mean, I get the Tom Cruising. I love Tom Cruise, as everyone knows, but he's a divisive character, to say the least. I would argue that Will Smith is the least divisive actor of all time. No. Everyone loves Will Smith. Everyone loves Will Smith.
It's like when I say I don't like cucumber, and people always give me the same thing back.
No, it's not the same at all.
No.
Cucumber's the shit. Will Smith is not shit at all.
Because people turn around to me and say cucumber is the most inoffensive thing there is. It's 90% water. Well, then that 10% of cucumber tastes like shit. It's awful. I don't like it, right? And I don't.
Amazingly,
Will Smith. I don't think he's a good actor. I don't think he carries films well. I think it's just always on him. But what I will say, when he started off, I mean, the Will Smith I'm not a fan of is the Will Smith of today. Like the films he's done. What was it? Hitch, the one where he was a superhero.
Is it Hitch? Yeah, maybe it was.
No. Hitch was the one where he hooks up Kevin James with.
Oh yeah.
And then you had what was the one where he was a superhero? It began with H as well.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were trying to say, and I was like, oh yeah, Hitch was a word. Hancock. Not a fan. Don't get me started on the fucking the Omega Man. He's so pretentious that they had to do him younger, and film. Him again. You are picking a handful of his worst films. I feel like you are missing out quite a bit. And I would argue that you actually watch him become a megastar in this movie. Like, you know, he's good, I would argue, all the way through. But it's when he's allowed his moments on screen basically on his own. Like, you know, the build up to the welcome to the Earth scene, where it's just him dragging the alien. And it's like, you got me dragging your heavy ass through the desert with your dreadlocks hanging out the back. What the hell is that smell?
Yeah.
All that stuff.
No, it's not. It's overacting. Do you know, right?
Oh, man.
His best scenes are when he's teamed up with Jeff Goldblum, because Jeff Goldblum carries him. They're fantastic together. Like when they're in the scene at the end. And,
I'm not arguing with that.
And they're smoking a cigar. And it's the ship gets released. And he goes, oh, time to go. Oh, I didn't hear no fat lady. Stop with the fat lady. You're obsessed with the fat lady. The way Jeff Goldblum carries scenes with him. Like, one of the good scenes is when they're talking about what they can do with the ship. And Jeff Goldblum saying, like, what he can do. He can submit a virus. He can do all this. Mm-hmm. And Will Smith was like, I saw how they fly. I saw him in action. I can fly this. No problem. It's like, no, you can't. But okay, you go ahead. You fly that alien spaceship. So when he fly, and then they're both talking, and Will Smith says, no, Jeff Goldblum says, do you really think you can fly it? And one of Will Smith's best lines in this film is, do you think you can do the bullshit that you just said? Like, it's literally...
He has the much tougher role because he is just like the all-American hero, isn't he? Kind of thing. He's the pilot. He wants to be at NASA. And if you have if you want a concept of how hard that role is, you only need to look at this movie's sequel to see how bland it can be in the wrong hands. Yeah. I think Will Smith does a great job. But I agree with you about Jeff Goldblum. And similar to how in this film we see Will Smith becoming a megastar on the screen in front of us, I feel like we also see Jeff Goldblum becoming the Jeff Goldblum we think of today.
Yeah.
Because it's very much that moment when they're in the ship and he pulls the handle the wrong way, so the ship goes backwards. And he's like, yes, without the oops. That away. And it was just like that moment in particular, I was like, that is so peak Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, and he's not peak Jeff Goldblum all the way through this. It's kind of like
like what was it, Serpico with Al Pacino? You can see him becoming the shouty Al Pacino. In this, you can see Jeff Goldblum becoming the mean machine that he invariably becomes.
Yes, because you don't see it much in The Fly. I know The Fly was 88, 89, and this is 96. But you see a lot more of Jeff Goldblum's hand acting in this than you would have previously. And that's a lot of Jeff Goldblum now. And as I'm talking to you, I'm doing it and I'm moving my hands.
Can't help it.
The best actor or the best character in this entire film, right?
Yeah,
Captain Jimmy Wilder, Harry Connick Jr.
Oh my God! You're the only person in the world who prefers Harry Connick Jr. to Will Smith. It's absolute madness.
Probably because he winds you up so much. Is probably one of them.
He does. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love his line, "Let's kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy." And he does have some good lines. It's a weird role, and supposedly Matthew Perry was supposed to be up for the role initially, but I think he actually turned it down, which is an interesting one. But he very much is the kind of comic relief in those scenes. Playing up against Will Smith's more. Well, Will Smith kind of is a bit of a two-hander in this role because there are elements of this film where he's the super stoic, serious kind of everyone else is mess around, but he's like, oh, I just want to get up there and whoop ET's ass. But then he also has his moments later in the year, later in the film, when he becomes more quippy, I suppose. But Harry Connick Jr. is swinging for the fences. For sure.
It's weird, isn't it? Because you have two buddy cop films going on. You've got the buddy cop of Will Smith and Harry Connick Jr. There's the scene where there's the weird proposal scene in the locker room. And just anything that they're talking together, Harry Connick Jr. is definitely following Will Smith's character in that. And then after Harry Connick Jr. dies, spoilers.
Because he's shit. Jimmy is garbage. Yeah. They have all that build-up. He dies almost immediately, pulling off a maneuver which clearly isn't going to work.
But then the buddy cop changes. Will Smith kind of becomes the comic relief to Jeff Goldblum's kind of straight man. So you've got Will Smith being the straight man at the beginning, and then towards the end, Jeff Goldblum takes when they become on-screen partners. Jeff Goldblum becomes the straight man to Will Smith's comic relief.
Yeah, it's a good point actually. I think he probably just playing against the person he's stuck with, and it's a weird. And I guess that's another thing with Joel Goldblum before we move on is. It's weird watching him in this because he is becoming the Jeff Goldblum we think of nowadays with the hand movements and the kind of memeing and stuff. But he's still a little bit the Fly Jeff Goldblum / Jurassic Park Jeff Goldblum. And I asked my wife about it, who obviously I'm obliged to mention in every single podcast. Is Jeff Goldblum sexy in this film? Because they're going for it. He's got the low-cut vest, he's got the bead necklace. He's clearly in pretty good shape in this film. And I was like, is he sick? Because obviously when people think of him as being sexy, you kind of have the Jurassic Park meme of him laying on his side, open shirt and stuff. And he was very much the quintessential, I mean, not quintessential because he is a little bit kooky, I suppose, but he was very much played off as a leading man for a number of years. And to my mind, if I look at him objectively, I'm like, well, he probably does have leading man good looks. But nowadays, I just can't remove the fact that he's Jeff Goldblum. He's completely this non-sexual being. He's just Jeff fucking Goldblum.
I mean, the sexy shot is definitely the action hero shot at the end, walking away from the crashed spaceship with your cigar in your mouth.
Oh, he's walking in that scene. I think he's still got the end of Buckaroo Banzai in his mind then, because he is like, all right, if I'm walking at the end of the scene next to Will Smith, I'm walking my ass off.
In Buckaroo Banzai, he's got a little bit of a hop, skip, and a jump to his step in that as he's walking along, like he's trying to catch up with himself.
Can I go back to those Jeff Goldblum-isms, I suppose? If you tell him to walk, he's going to walk.
I did it to wind you up, saying Harry Connick Jr. was the best part of the film. My real, and I'm not taking this back, this is not another fake out, my real best person of this film is Judd Hirsch as Jeff Goldblum's dad.
He's fantastic. He's fantastic.
He has
one of my favourite lines.
Judd Hirsch is great in anything he does. Judd Hirsch is even great in Numbers, where they solve crime with mathematics, right?
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
But in this, he is absolutely fantastic. He is so good in this.
He has so many great lines. The one that stands out, and this is a movie with a lot of great lines in it, but I look like a schlemiel. And when he just keeps going, people are out there looting, vultures. It's just the way he delivers the lines.
My favourite one is, all you need is love. John Lennon, smart man, shot in the back, very sad. Like, what's going on?
Again, it's all in the delivery, isn't it? And the thing is with this film, there are a number of memorable deliveries. And the one thing to remember going back to this film is that this truly is an ensemble piece. Obviously, we talk about Jeff Goldblum now, and we talk about Will Smith. And I think retrospectively, people think about this as being a Will Smith film. Make no mistake, this wasn't a Will Smith film.
No, because this is not a starring vehicle for anyone. It's an ensemble cast, and they're all carrying their part of the film. There's so many actors in this. There's so many people.
There's so many people, and you've got to remember as well, in 1996, Will Smith wasn't a movie star yet. Like, he kind of tiptoed towards
Will Smith was on maybe the last but one season of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air from this. I think he had just done Bad Boys, maybe?
Yeah, he just, I think Bad Boys was 95?
Yeah, I want to say 95,
So he's kind of finding his way in the world, but nobody's going to see this at this point because it's a Will Smith movie. And when you see the poster, you notice his name's not at the top. It's just, it's sold very much as just this event movie. It's Independence Day. The ensemble.
Sorry, before you finish that, just because you want to say star power, and I know we're going to go on to the ensemble cast. This film did do what you wanted to do, which was light his star, because then Men in Black in 1997 definitely became starring Will Smith.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like, he was already on a trajectory based on what he had done before. Fresh Prince was huge. Obviously, Bad Boys was a big hit. But then this film, and this film was an absolute monster of a film, an absolute monster at the box office. And, that he was the person I think most people took from the film, with so many actors and actresses, and everyone is largely very good in this film. But, and I know you're not a fan, but jokes aside, Will Smith is the one who really stood out in this film. He's the one who captured, the kind of moviegoer's attention, for sure.
For a film like this, with an ensemble cast like this, you always get a standout role. You always do. And yes, I do agree that the standout role became Will Smith.
I mean, well, there were a few arguments, because you mentioned Judd Hirsch, but I also want to give a shout out for a number of people in this film who are like, man, there are so many famous people in this film. And when I say famous people, one thing you'll notice, this isn't like a 1970s destruction film where you got Paul Newman at the top of his game. Most of the people in this film you kind of know, but nobody's super famous. Nobody's overpowering the film. Like, if this had been made 10 years later and it's got Will Smith, as we mentioned, it would have been a Will Smith film. But back then it was like, well, this is an Independence Day movie first and foremost. But there's still a huge number of people. But
I want you to say their names. I want you to say their names when you say their names, and I want you to pull out the most random film of theirs you can think of.
Well, I can't, because the two people I want to mention, I don't know their names. They are the bittest of bit parts, but they're just the way they deliver a line. Like the dude, when the ships are coming towards Earth, and they've just got like a random soldier, he's got like, they should be entering our atmosphere in the next 25 minutes. And it's just like the way he delivers that line, he makes it memorable, but not nearly as memorable as who I can only describe as this Periscope guy. When they shoot the nuke at the ship, they have like a truck on the ground to provide visual confirmation.
Yeah.
And he's obviously, that's his only scene. He's in the truck, and his main thing is, all right, you just need to look through the periscope and tell them if the target has been destroyed. He looks through that periscope like a motherfucker.
I can't remember him.
He scrunches up his face. He kind of winks his eyes. He looks at the periscope. Then he does it again. And he has that great line, target remains, sir. I repeat, target remains. I'm like, everyone in this film is vying for that little bit of attention. I love the fact that even like the bittest of bit part players still have their moments in this film. But that is the thing. Jokes aside, with those characters,
I can't remember that dude.
Oh, dude! Like they're in the truck, and it's just something about the way he scrunches his face up. It's
not the old guy. It's not Robert Loggia, is it? That's not who you're on about.
No. It's when they decide that they're going to nuke the spaceships.
Yeah.
It's just after what's his name? Bill Pullman is being kind of like, he's had the run-in with the alien, Area 51, which we will get to, which is insane. And he says, nuke them all and all that jazz. Yeah. And they have that moment when they like watch it on screen. They've just got a truck down basically on ground level, which can survive a nuclear blast to provide, again, visual confirmation. And it's just this one little moment, but I was like, he is really acting his ass off. But it is a film of many people acting their ass off, none more so than Harvey Fierstein. The guy from the news agency with David. Oh my god! I've got to call my brother. I've got to call my lawyer. Yeah.
So I remember him as Robin Williams' brother from Mrs. Doubtfire.
That's weird you say that, because I was watching it. I was like, where do I know that voice from? And I had to look it up online. He was Carl from The Simpsons. He was Homer's assistant in the famous Simpson Delilah episode from 1990. It was from one of the first seasons. He's got such a distinct voice. And don't get me wrong, he is another one of those swinging for the fences. David wasn't mean. It's just, I just love the fact that this film is able to go from relatively serious, albeit B-movie trappings, to pretty broad comedy at times.
You want to go swinging for the fences, mind. No more so than Brent Spiner as Dr.
I've got that down.
Brackish Oaken. Like
Data to everyone else from Star Trek Next Gen. Yeah, basically, that dude was said, you need to be a scientist from like the 60s. That's what you need to be. Everything was good. I'm pretty sure he was wearing wicker sandals at one point. He's got his hair down. He's got his lab coat just open, just flowing. Do you know what? They probably turned around to him and said, we want you to be in a sci-fi film. We don't want you to be an android. You don't have to paint your face. Yeah, you're in all the emotion.
Yeah, I am in.
And remember, I appreciate the whole idea is that he's been locked up at Area 51 for a number of years, so he's a little bit unhinged. But again, he's another one who is absolutely swinging the fences. But this film isn't a movie for subtlety. I mean, even the cuts between scenes in this film explode. I'm not sure if you noticed at the start of the film, where it's like Independence Day, and there's even an explosion, like it's a sound of an explosion rather than a visual explosion. But there's the sound of an explosion when they cut to David playing chess with his father. I'm like, come on, guys. This is just ridiculous. But like the credits explode, for heaven's sake. They're laying it all on the line. But everyone knew what the score was. And that was the brilliant thing with this film, was that everyone knew what they were getting into when they went to see this. And maybe people aren't aware of it now, but back in 1996, this was, without question, the biggest non-IP related film of all time, as far as I was concerned, at the cinema, in terms of the only films that have come close, arguably, since, in terms of, not Avengers, not Harry Potter, non-IP stuff, and maybe the James Cameron films with Titanic and Avatar.
Yeah.
You've got to remember, when those films came out, there was a lot of apprehension about them, especially with Titanic. Everyone's like, man, this film's is gonna bomb. Even Avatar, they're like, oh, it's too much romance, it's giant blue cats. With this, everyone was looking forward to it because of those trailers. And it was such an effects-driven film in 96, and everyone was like, it doesn't matter who's in it. I've seen the bit where the spaceship blows up the White House, and I have to see this at the cinema. And everyone I knew went to see it. Everyone.
Right, Liam, you've just said too much romance. I'm putting a stop to it now, right? I played drinking game while I edited last week's episode. I can't do it again. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to say romance or romantic.
Oh, but that's not the question. Well, is there much romance? There's two, obviously, relationships in this film, and they're both a bit strange. I still don't know why Vivica Fox has to be a stripper in this film, other than to maybe provide an excuse for why Will Smith, I guess the idea is that he's supposed to be amazing, and the only reason he's not at NASA is because his girlfriend / wife is a stripper.
No, it's basically for that one interaction between her and the First Lady, where I'm a dancer. Yeah. Oh, Juilliard. No. Exotic. Literally, that was the only reason they made her a stripper, was just so they could have that exchange.
Although I will encourage everyone, if you any interest in looking into this film, just have a look at Vivica Fox's IMDb picture. It is bananas. It is full on 1980s. I don't even know what it is. She looks like a 1980s pop star. It's the most insane. You think most of them have a relatively up-to-date picture. Everything's quite classy. This is all hair, all purple from what I remember.
It looks like she's an extra from it was Bruce Leroy, The Last Dragon.
Yeah, she does look like something.
Looks like an extra, like the nightclub scene.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great shout. It's a really strange choice. But yeah, their relationship is fine, but whatever. I'm still not quite sure why she's a stripper. And the other one, obviously, is the president, Bill Pullman, and his wife, which is strange because it's all building towards them suddenly being on screen together. And obviously the idea is that she's dying in that scene and we're supposed to care, but they have no screen time together at all until that point. Yeah. And you have to, like, all they've been on a phone call together, and that's it. Although, then they're apart, and then she dies, and it's really strange.
But I do think that's a great swerve, mind, because they build it up that they're on the phone together. They can't see each other. This has happened now. This split. She's saved by Vivica A. Fox. They get together. It's fine. Happy ending for the president. But then she dies. I think it's quite a good swerve.
It might be if she wasn't the most healthy-looking person to ever die in cinema history. Like, the doctor comes in and she goes, "Oh, if only we could have got to her earlier. She's got internal bleeding." She's not been to surgery. He's basically looked at her and gone, "She's probably bleeding on the inside. She's fucked."
Yeah.
Then he goes up to her. She's laying in bed. She looks as healthy as a fucking horse. And we're supposed to believe that 30 seconds after they cut away, she just dies?
All she needs...
Give me a fucking break.
All she needs is a blood transfusion. I mean, that can cure vampirism from last week. That can definitely cure whatever ails her in this one. Because they didn't even...
For all those doctors,
what she died of.
If only they had the part-time doctor from Near Dark. If only they could have saved the president's wife, the first lady's wife.
Part-time farm vet, by the sounds of it, not even a doctor.
Yeah.
Did they even say what she died of, mind? I can't remember.
Well, I think they said internal bleeding. That was it. Because that allows her to look very well, but still be like, well, she's screwed because she's bleeding on the inside.
You call two relationships, mind. I kind of think you're missing the third one, which is Jeff Goldblum and his estranged wife.
Oh, yeah. Again, that's just so thrown together at the last minute. Like, you have that final scene when they're walking back, and obviously, like you already mentioned, the hero scene when they're smoking the cigar and Jeff Goldblum's doing that walk. Yeah. And I get that Will Smith is with Vivica A. Fox, but all of a sudden, we're supposed to buy into this relationship between Jeff Goldblum and his ex-wife. The thing is, this film is relatively long, and I'm glad it's not any longer. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes, but there's a bit too much going on. There's no two ways about it. And the first half is all leading towards one moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
When the ships align, and we'll get to that in a moment. And then the rest of the film is trying to kind of crowbar in one too many, like, plot lines, basically. One too many. Certainly, the plot actually remains relatively straightforward, but they've just got too many characters. It's the kind of an issue that a lot of these films have, and they do. Admittedly, they do a relatively good job of giving everyone their moments, but it invariably means that a few of them, like a few kind of what are supposed to be emotional moments, just end up falling a bit flat.
I think that's the Roland Emmerich curse, mind, because he tries it on any of these disaster films he does. Day After Tomorrow, 2012. Mm-hmm. He's got a big
Stargate. Stargate wasn't a disaster film.
You've got a big ensemble cast. Mm-hmm. You've got to try and give everyone their moments. Some are going to feel lackluster, to be fair.
Yeah.
What I do love
always going to happen
is we're about 30 minutes into this podcast, and we haven't mentioned one of the truly greatest actors, one of the truly greatest deliveries, being "I'm back," Mr. Randy Quaid himself.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally, I had that down.
If you can fly a crop duster, if you can fly a plane from Vietnam, apparently you can fly a fighter jet. I'm assuming maybe the skill is universal. I don't know. Once again, from Near Dark last week, we learned Caleb was able to get a 30-second truck driving course from a bouncy truck driver, and he was able to. So maybe Randy Quaid did do it. Maybe when the aliens abducted Randy Quaid, they gave him the knowledge, but they probably gave it the knowledge to all the other weird farmers that seem to arrive at Area 51, and they were able to fly as well.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't matter because he's so annoying that anything revolving around plot, it just completely goes over your head. He truly is the Jar Jar Binks of this movie. Make no mistake about it. I do have a lot of time for Randy Quaid. He was great in, what was the car film we did the podcast on? Just the car film.
Wraith.
The Wraith, yeah, he's fantastic in The Wraith. I love him in National Lampoon, stuff like that. In this, it's when the movie goes a bit too broad. I appreciate that the movie arguably needs that grounded narrative, in terms of the everyday people and how it's impacting them.
But he's not everyday.
No, he really isn't, is he? And but between him being horrendous and that terrible Keanu Reeves impersonator, I can't be getting on with that either.
Miguel, played by James Duval. People might remember him. Not from a lot of films, obviously, but he was also one of the gang of young thieves in Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. Yeah. I mean, there's so many issues with that. One of them being, I'm not buying for a second that Miguel is Randy Quaid's son in this film.
Well, like they were all. There was like 3 or 4 of them, wasn't they? Like most of them were different ethnicities. Because Giuseppe, the brother, wasn't he? Like he was a different. Troy played by Giuseppe Andrew. Sorry.
I was going to say, I can't remember Giuseppe being in this.
Troy was played by Giuseppe Andrew. So he's
okay. There we go.
Obviously he looks Italian. You got James Duval, who looks Mexican, Spanish.
Yeah.
Randy Quaid is the whitest of whites.
He is crackalicious.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah, he is white as fuck.
So, is it hinting then that he's Mr. Go Around? You know, he's like Papa Ray Dudley or Papa Dudley. Just
he's back in his prime before he was drinking, when he was a flyboy with the military and stuff. He was obviously just going around fucking everything. Basically.
He was sowing that seed.
He was, but he's usually with these kind of characters, like don't want to be sexist, but it's usually the women who end up with all the kids. In this instance, Randy's ended up with the bloody lot. I don't know how that's happened, but his performance is something else. And towards, I don't want to say it ruins the end of the film, but the whole I'm back thing and the stuff with the president up in the sky, under the ship, as it were, it still looks kind of good, but it's goddamn, it's cheesy as all hell, isn't it? Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of his performance.
What about, you said the president? Are you a fan of the speech?
Well, it's weird because Bill Pullman's performance, I think, actually sums up this movie perfectly, because it's somehow both brilliant and a bit shit. But what I think redeems it, because there are a few moments in this film where I'm just like, man, he's acting quite badly.
Yeah.
But because of the speech, it's like when you look back at the most memorable interpretations of the US president on screen, that's going to be the centerpiece because of the speech. I don't think it's the best performance ever for the US president, but supposedly a lot of people loved it. But that speech was so good that was actually what got them the name Independence Day, because they had an issue getting the name Independence Day for the movie.
Yeah.
But they were going to go Doomsday or something like that. But then one of the early showings, they saw the scene and they're like, all right, dude, we've got to call it Independence Day. I mean, the end of it is an absolute belter. It's like, should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day. Cue the fucking salutes. I bet you they were absolutely losing their mind in cinemas in the US. But it's a crack of a speech.
That is great. Right?
Excuse me.
That
carried away.
That fires up the first 20 people who are by the truck. But all he's got is a megaphone with a speaker. So the people in front can hear him. Okay? But if the best I can do it, if you've ever been to a swimming pool, like in Cardiff, there's a couple of pools that have the wave machine. Every half an hour, they flick a switch, you get a siren, the wave machine comes on, and then you get the lifeguard goes on the tannoy, and they're saying something about non-swimmers go to the shallow end, good swim, and do you know what I mean? Wave machines are on. Because I don't know what they say, because when they're speaking into the tannoy, you're getting that's all people.
Yeah, so especially if you're at the back.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So the first 20 people are hearing Bill Pullman. We celebrate our Independence Day. The people at the back are hearing.
What did he say? What the fuck? But it was so good.
What?
I reckon it was so good that it was just contagious. They're like, dude, man, they are so into this. Like the 20 at the front was so into that speech that it was just contagious, and everybody cheered. But yeah, I do appreciate that.
It was probably
not enough people heard it.
It was Chinese.
It was. Yeah, God knows what it was by the time it got to the
day we celebrate our Independence Day, probably to he wants rice and peas.
Yeah, it's probably rice and peas by the time we got to the back. But for Bill Pullman's performance, I mean, that's the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I said, I think it's a bit of a hit and miss performance. But
what I will
the speech is probably one of the most memorable moments of the entire film.
What I will give this film is the fact that it looks fantastic. Even today, it looks great. I think it looks great. Like not even like the dogfights in the air against the aliens and the fighter jets look amazing. The ships.
That's the only bit I thought looked a little bit ropey.
I thought that it must have been the version I had. I had it on digital, so maybe.
No, it was the only bit I thought, like, it aged it a bit. I thought the wide shot, the ships themselves, the big ships, they look amazing. And the battles, when you see like a wide shot and you see, like, you think of the final sequence when you got the ship over the city, well, not the city, but over America, and you got the fighter jets going below it, that all looks great. There's just one or two scenes, like the scene with Jimmy and Will Smith when they're fighting the smaller ships, and it gets a bit closer on the ships. Those bits are the only parts of the film where I was like, that looks a little bit 1996. But other than that minor criticism, I agree with you. A lot of it is aged like a fine wine.
I do think the ones that looked a bit bad is obviously when the ships are crashing, when they're going down, so they got to show them going down to the ground. That kind of makes it age a bit. But what I wanted to say is when you finally get into space and you've got the ships in space and you've got Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum in there and the ship and the aliens, and then them escaping, them having a fight, them having a dogfight through, or actually not a dogfight, they're escaping through the ship. And the doors are closing, and faster, must go faster, and things like that. Yeah. And it all looks great. Even like the shockwave, I feel could probably happen, but then again, somebody's probably going to science the shit out of me and say a shockwave can't travel in space. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, but it's just it looks fantastic. I think it looks great.
I think it does. I think that the most impressive part, though, is still, and it's my favorite part of the film by a country mile, is the first 40 or so minutes. Like, this film doesn't mess around because they know everyone's already seen that fantastic trailer, which has fundamentally sold the film. So everyone's waiting for that moment. And usually, you think of even Roland Emmerich's other films, the destruction usually happens over a long period to stretch the film out. Here, obviously, there are other action scenes afterwards, but the big moment everyone's waiting for really is a moment because all the ships are synchronized. But it's that very B-movie start where it's like that unsubtle Star Wars homage at the start where you see Earth and the ship goes over the top like a Star Destroyer. So you know the aliens are coming within 2 minutes. That everybody on Earth finds out almost immediately that aliens are coming. There's no slow build-up to this. And basically what you're waiting is for that visual reveal. And the impact, obviously the impact in 1996 was unbelievable. But even now, when the ships come into view, like obviously they do a great way of building up the tension when you're seeing kind of like news reports from other countries and you're seeing hints of it. But when you see it arrive in New York and the way it comes through the clouds and the way it's burning through the atmosphere, it just looks absolutely phenomenal. And I don't think there's been anything quite to the scale of that since. And the scale thing is actually important because of the way they place the ship over a city. You've got the skyline as a reference point and you see the ship and immediately know, and you can understand just how big it is. It was something that was lost in the second film. The second film has tons of problems, but one of them, the ship was so big that you're just like, well, it was just really fucking big. But here the ships are coming in and you can see it in relation to a city. You can imagine what it would be like looking out like Will Smith does, neighbors moving out and seeing it on the skyline. But that very almost 50s-esque B-movie start to this film, I think is its strongest moment. And in terms of having a moment, the way it puts all of its characters in place, they're building up this tension, as obviously David's letting everyone know, checkmate and all that jazz. And then you've just got the ships. And basically, you have, 5 set pieces in one? It's not like, we're going to blow up the White House, then we're going to blow up the Empire State Building. No, we're going to do it all at fucking once. Yeah. And it's just boom, boom, boom. And they all look, because it's done with, obviously they use computer effects, but it's one thing we've mentioned so many times in this podcast. The thing that really holds up for older films is physical effects. And they obviously built models of the Empire State Building, the White House.
This has the most miniatures, doesn't it? Or it still holds record for most miniatures, I believe. But you're saying that then? You said that they blew up the White House, they blew up the Empire State Building. Watching these films, right, do you feel safe in the knowledge that if aliens attacked or if there was a worldwide disaster or a volcano was going to, anything like this, that for some reason they always target America first, but we're fine because then America will save the world? Like, do you feel safe knowing that we're in our little corner and it's not going to...
Well, they're not doing that in this film, though, are they? They attack everyone.
Yeah,
so it's fantastic.
They attack most of America's landmarks first, don't they? It's like
that is the weird thing about this film.
And then America are the ones saving the day. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. Like, it has its issues because the film becomes so US-centric. But they do go out their way to say at the start, no, these ships are all over the world. they're in London. They mention there's one over Moscow and all that. So they're basically all the positions of power. And obviously a lot of the positions of power in the world are in the United States, but I'm sure there was one over Beijing and Shanghai or whatever.
I loved as well. You're saying the ships are all over the world. I love the ending when I think it was Robert Loggia who said, get on the wire, tell everyone in the world how to destroy them. And then it shows a picture of one of the ships over a desert with a tribe of indigenous people. How are they destroying it?
I don't know. Like the international representations of this film are dodgy at best, because obviously when they finally decide, okay, we're going to do Morse code and we're going to pass on the because the whole idea is that they've taken out their satellite, so they can't communicate with the question. Like my wife asked, like, why isn't Bill Pullman talking to other world leaders? Well, the point is that they're supposed to be. They can't communicate with anyone else. But of course, they get their Morse code, and then suddenly it cuts around the world to the British forces, who were so British. Oh, the Americans have been in touch using old Morse code. And they've got like the Russians smoking cigarettes, wearing stripy T-shirts, and the Japanese just being, I don't know, Japanese as fuck.
The British one.
It's so broad.
What I always picture when anyone goes to the British, or it shows like the whole world watching, and then it shows a British person watching. Always in my mind, it goes back to Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, where William Sadler...
so many things do.
William Sadler, who plays the Reaper, also plays the English father watching the TV. And they're surrounded. He's got his paper, he's got his eggs, he's got his Weetabix, he's got anything British on the table. And he goes, by Jove, or oh dear. Like, literally, that's all. Like, whenever it shows anything, like you just said, the Yanks have been in touch. It's insane. It's
so, like, the strokes are so unbelievably broad, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that the action sequences in this film are truly spectacular. And one of the tricks is, because, it's easy to forget amidst the scale, you're watching millions of people get killed. And obviously, Roland Emmerich is aware of this, and he uses it in his other films. He uses it in 2012 in one scene in particular, where he plays on emotions in such a simple but effective way. You see all these millions of people get incinerated, but if Boomer the dog survives, we can all fucking cheer. And cheer we fucking do. We cheer as Boomer jumps through the door, and in the background behind him, you can see families, kids, children's grandmothers, all getting incinerated by this fire burning down the tunnel. We're like, yes, Boomer the fucking dog, who we know nothing about, has made it. Everything is fine. It's such a simple trick, but he uses it all the time.
If zombies attack, or if the world is like this, are you saving your family or your dog?
Save your dog. No. Jokes aside, like it's a ridiculous thing, but it totally works in the cinema. Well, in an American cinema, should we say? I guarantee that scene gets a cheer because everyone's like,
"Oh no,
yay, the dog survives!" But nobody cares. You can kill 1 million people as long as the puppy survives. Dude, you stick a puppy surviving at the end of Schindler's List. It's a totally different fucking film.
That scene got a whoop. That scene did not get a cheer. That scene had like a whoop whoop or something, or USA.
You're only giving it a whoop whoop, not a cheer. Fair enough. But needless to say, it seems to. A lot of deaths are forgivable as long as you save a dog, a puppy, whatever. It's just.
I mean, God. I was just. Well, just before the podcast, I was looking up Roland Emmerich as well, because you just mentioned him.
Excuse me.
Because, I mean, this dude loves a disaster movie.
Oh, he certainly does.
I mean, God bless him. He's still trying, isn't he? What was the latest one this year, Moonfall?
Well, it's weird, because what I think of when I think of Roland Emmerich is very much, he's like the Wachowskis of destruction movies. Basically, he's still writing checks based off a handful of films that were successful like 20 years ago. Like, I love Stargate. It's not a destruction movie or a disaster film in the most literal sense. I really like Stargate. Then he obviously did Independence Day. And again, let's not forget, one of the biggest movies of all time. Godzilla was shit, but it was a hit. Day After Tomorrow, I think, did pretty well. And then since then, it's been pretty slim pickings. And Day After Tomorrow was a good, 20 years ago. Oh, God, I don't want to know how long ago it was. I need to say it was a while ago.
2004.
Oh, God, that's depressing.
Yeah.
But then since then, he's done like White House Down. That was gash. Midway, gash. Moonfall, I've not seen it, but from what I hear, gash. Yeah. But he keeps getting the money. It's like the Wachowskis. Everyone's like, "Well, dude, they made The Matrix. Let's just give them money and hope that they make a good film." And it just never seems to happen.
He did his best film in 1992, though. Before Stargate.
What was that?
Universal Soldier.
Oh, I do love Universal Soldier. I do legitimately love
How
Universal
have we
Soldier.
not covered that fucking film on this podcast?
I can't believe I forgot that was a Roland Emmerich. Of course it's a Roland Emmerich film. Yeah, we need to do Universal Soldier.
No, I'm sorry. There is not of course that is a Roland Emmerich film. No, you would not look at Universal Soldier, look at the work that he's delivered since then, and gone. Of course, Universal Soldiers are Roland Emmerich.
No. It was more that.
No way in hell you would link those two together. You barely link Stargate to Roland Emmerich. No. But I can guarantee you, people look at Dante's Peak and probably think, "Oh, that's a Roland Emmerich film." Armageddon, that could be a Roland Emmerich film. Do you know what I mean? He's set a niche now.
Well, he's just become synonymous with the subgenre, hasn't he? And that is the thing. And obviously, a big part of that was Independence Day because it was such a big hit. So it allowed him to get the funding to make these films. But you are right, before Independence Day, he was just making, I guess, what you'd call high-concept sci-fi action films. Like Stargate, Universal Soldier, those are high-concept sci-fi films. And then, obviously, Independence Day. And they were big hits in their own right, for sure. But again, to come back to the idea, just really how big of a hit Independence Day was. Like, it was absolutely massive.
In 1987, he made a gem called either Ghost Chase or Hollywood Monster, depending on where you are.
I've never heard of either of those.
In an old Hollywood mansion, the spirit of an old family retainer inhabits an old grandfather clock. There's a lot of old in this. When a movie company uses the mansion for a film, the spirit inhabits the body of a prosthetic robot based on the photo of the butler, who then persuades the two filmmakers to track down the great-grandfather's fortune before the old house is destroyed, revealing a family scandal. And the picture...
How have I never heard of that?
So basically, it's the butler looks like Yoda. Let me show you a picture, right? Hang on, he's moved. The butler looks like Yoda.
Okay, yeah. That still doesn't ring any bells.
No, not at all. But I've not seen this film, but I want to do this film just for the poster alone.
Well, the poster, Ghost Chase, is absolutely fantastic. So we'll put that up on the site for sure. So maybe we'll get a bit of feedback on the people who have actually seen it. But you do get this every so often. I think Bill Murray, I can't remember the filming. Is it Heaven's Gate, or I might be making that up?
The one he wanted to do after, was it? Which one?
Ghostbusters.
He did Ghostbusters so we could do, Yeah.
So you do get a lot of these movies where, and didn't Roland Emmerich also do a film about William Shakespeare, like about him being like a fake playwright? I'm sure he did. With Rhys Evans was starring in it. Look that up while I rattle on for a second.
Yeah, you rattle on.
But yeah, you get a lot of these where somebody has a massive hit, and basically what that allows them to do is just to write a blank check. Like, okay, as long as you make another movie like that, we'll fund your passion project. So you often get these strange little films after somebody does something amazing or hugely successful.
Rhys Evans, you said Evans. That's
Rhys Evans.
Yeah.
Evans.
I mean, two Welsh guys can't pronounce a Welsh name.
We should be. I thought it was Rhys Evans, but whatever, man. I apologize.
Anonymous.
We should get it right. We are Welsh. Anonymous. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. That was another one of his weird films where I'm not quite sure how he got the funding for it. But to get back to the film, as strange, obviously, this is another high concept film, aliens coming destroying the earth. But for the most part, I'm totally on board with it. Where I think it jumps the shark, and you did allude to it earlier, is when it goes to Area 51. And so much of it is to do with the fact that they have so many coincidences which somehow lead to everyone being in the same place at the same time. But what I really can't deal with is Albert Nimzicki, I think his character is, the fact that he knows about Area 51, and when aliens show up on Earth, he doesn't see fit to tell the president or the military that they've got a ship, that they've got an alien, that they might know a great deal about these attackers. No, I'm going to keep my lips shut for, I don't know, story purposes. It's a ridiculous decision by what is admittedly a horror. He's one of the few horrible characters in this film. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad performance, because you do enjoy hating him. And when he has that moment at the end when the president fires him with, let's be clear, the lamest push of all time. It's the one moment where Bill Pullman is supposed to look physically tough, and he kind of pushes him under his chest. It's very effeminate way of pushing.
Although there is that good line as well when he teams up again with Judd Hirsch in the prayer circle.
Oh yeah. I'm not Jewish.
Nobody's perfect.
I mean, one of the things that took me out of the movie because it took my wife out of the movie was during that sequence when they're at Area 51. Everyone's wearing hazmat suits, but nobody's wearing gloves. Oh my God! My wife works in a lab. She's a scientist. She was fucking furious. She's like, "What? They wear hazmat suits but no gloves? That makes no sense." I was like, "Okay, calm down. It's fine." Rob also hates Will Smith. Jesus Christ. Absolutely mental. But I mean, this does all lead invariably towards, the big kind of, I guess, the finale of the film. And I think the film struggles. And not that I think the end is bad in any way. It's just the film peaks at whatever it is, an hour into the film. You can't top the destruction of the White House, of the Empire State Building, of all these, of the building in LA, whose name I forget. That the problem is with the film is that it peaks early, and the rest of the film then is trying to build itself back up, and I don't think it ever quite manages it. I mean, it does have a dildo on the side of a spaceship for no apparent reason, which I always thought was quite funny. But other than that, I mean, I guess what kind of saves it, it's not as, like, the effects never quite match what happens earlier in the film, but you do get Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum on screen together. And that does feel like it's that moment in the film where you're like, I wish they had more screen time together. And it makes me sad about the sequel, because that's what the sequel really should have been. Obviously, it's going to be an ensemble again. But you're like, give me an hour of Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum together on screen, because they got great chemistry immediately. And you only get this like little taste of it at the end of the film, and it's just snatched away from you forever. It's a bit of a shame, but I mean, obviously, I feel like the final action sequence on the ground, not on the ground, they're in ships, but on Earth, is undermined somewhat by the whole Randy Quaid business, because I'm just not a fan of that. But I do like the stuff up in the spaceship, with Jeff Gold. It's absolutely ridiculous from a premise perspective, but you kind of go along with it because they're both so much fun.
That's the premise perspective as well.
Excuse me.
And it's going to be really weird to say, because obviously it's set in space, but it's the human factor with the two of them. Just the honest discussions that they're having, and they're chatting and everything like that. It just it does so well. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Will Smith, as you've said about 19 times already. But I think, like I said, I think he's carried by Jeff Goldblum. But I think they do so well together. I think they bounce off well together. I think it's done really well.
It does. The
emotion that's carried in that scene alone, like where they're smoking their cigars, they're having a chat, and then everything kicks into high gear when they're released. And the fact that they were going to just not give themselves up. What's the word?
They were going to, basically
kill themselves. What's the?
Yeah,
but it's not kill themselves.
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Sorry, when they're going to sacrifice themselves, which is fantastic. It's not fantastic that Will Smith is going to sacrifice himself, but the fact that they're going to do that to save the world, and then obviously everything happens, they get to escape, and it's like a pasted on happy ending where, oh wait, no, actually you get to escape, you get to have your hero walk. I think you would have had more of a dramatic moment if they couldn't escape. They did explode.
If they just explode. Well, they do that
if
in some
main characters are dead. I think that would carry more weight.
It's weird, like a lot of these disaster movies, if you think of like was it Poseidon, whatever it was, or what was the one where they go to the center of the earth? The Core.
The Core, yeah.
Where I'm pretty sure everyone dies in that, or at least a lot of them anyway.
It's just Hilary Swank and Aaron Eckhart survived, didn't they?
Yeah, but a lot of these films, there usually is that big sacrifice moment, and there is in this. The problem is, it's Randy Quaid, and you're actually quite glad to see him die. You're like, it would have more of an impact if it was the president, or like you say, if it had been Will Smith or Jeff Goldblum. But by the end, you like them so much, they're like, man, I hope they survive this. And luckily for them, this film is playing by Hollywood time, because for some reason, they give them only... They know how big the ship is. They give them 30 seconds to escape the ship before the missile goes off. That 30 seconds, I counted, lasts the best part of a minute. You know, I just thought it was going to be in real time. I'm like, this is a long ass 30 seconds. It's because it's not 30 seconds at all. But yeah, I think in this instance, you like those characters so much. I think it would have been too much of a bummer to kill them both off. But I think if those two survive and perhaps the president sacrifices himself, I guess too many people would be like, well, what about his daughter? She's lost her mother and now she's lost her father as well. So like, just kill Randy Quaid. He's the worst. Just off him. So fair enough. But like I said, despite the fact that I think the first half of this film is much stronger than the second, I enjoyed it back to front. You know, it's still a great movie, and even obviously it's never going to have the same impact that it had back in 1996 when the effects were cutting edge and when you're watching it on the biggest screen possible, which is still the best place to watch this, obviously. Yeah. But it's what it reminds me of is something like Avatar. It's not as good a film. It's not as well made as Avatar. But it was a 5-star spectacle when it was released. Like when you saw it, it was a 5-star cinematic experience. Independence Day, Avatar. When I went to see them on the big screen for the first time, there are a few films that have had that level of impact on me. But when you watch it again as a movie, it's a 3-4 star kind of thing. It's still good, but obviously, you know, that you kind of start paying attention to the story and the characters a bit more. You're like, well, I'm not too sure about all these, but still enjoyable all the same.
Oh, 100%. Like I say, I mean, you do have fun with it, so I can't fault that for how much fun you have with it. It's just, there are things that let it down. I mean, Will Smith being one of them, obviously, but...
Yeah. And obviously it goes very Team America towards the end of the film in particular. Yeah. Like the whole thing with the president, I'm a pilot, I belong in the sky. I'm just like, that always kind of makes me cringe and my toes curl a bit, but still. But yeah, we got to move on anyway, because otherwise we'll talk about this film all day. What do we usually do first? Love and hate. So in terms of love, Jeff Goldblum, perfect balance. You know, I mentioned the fact that he's in the Serpico Pacino phase of his career when he's still the leading man, but you're starting to get a little bit of that weirdness. And obviously the fact that he goes full buckaroo for the walk at the end. I've got, as a counterpoint, Will Smith. I think he's absolutely fantastic in this. I think you really do see the superstar that I think he is a ready-made superstar in the same way that Eddie Murphy was in 1982. I just think you put him on screen, you're like, that's a movie star. And number 3, I just don't think the destruction of America has ever looked better. And the fact that they chose not to destroy the Twin Towers in New York, because it would have been weird if they had, because obviously the Twin Towers still exist in 1996. And if one of the kind of overriding, like the big shots in this film is a alien ship blowing up the Twin Towers, I'm not sure how people would react to it now. And I don't think you'd be able to remove it from obviously what happened in 2001. So I'm very glad, an odd thing to say, that they chose to blow up the Empire State Building.
I think if they would have done the Twin Towers, it would have been cut by now. We wouldn't see it again.
They would have had to do something different, yeah. It'd be a bit too weird, a bit too on the nose.
Judd Hirsch. I love Judd Hirsch in this film. I think he's absolutely fantastic in this film.
He's awesome.
He's so good. The effects of the ship, flying, the humor, everything around the whole last, I guess, third where they're actually having the space battles and stuff. I think they look really good. Jeff Goldblum. I think Jeff Goldblum is as Jeff Goldblum as he can get, or as he's getting. In this film,
he's getting it for really sure. Well. We're watching the birth of modern day Jeff Goldblum back in 1996.
That's me. That's 3 for me.
Oh, cool. Yeah. In terms of hate, Randy Quaid, when you mentioned it, he's just a bit too broad in this film, despite the fact that I do traditionally like Randy Quaid. The fact that it goes a little bit too Team America at the end, it's a bit of a tough watch. It's just a little bit silly. And especially the fact that this is happening all over the world. And they do make an excuse for this to be America-centric with the whole communication thing. But, you know, when you cut away for 10 seconds and show the broadest of broad strokes for pretty much every other nation, it's like, all right, dude, Jesus Christ. Yeah. And the fact that to get everyone together at the end, it's just coincidence town. Like Vivica Fox just happens to find the First Lady when her husband is getting introduced to the president. They all end up in Area 51 together. It's like it kind of washes over the first time amidst all the explosions and stuff. But the coincidence that have to happen to allow every character to be in the same place at the same time is quite ludicrous. But hey.
So for me, Will Smith, The Fresh Prince, and Willard Carroll Smith II.
It's a good shout. Solid list.
I don't agree with them. No, so Will Smith. Not a fan of Will Smith. I don't think he has as much gravitas as you do in this film. I don't think he adds enough to this film to say, this film is sold on Will Smith. I think you could replace his character with anyone and it'd still be a great film because of the people around him. So, not a huge fan of him. Adam Baldwin, who we haven't mentioned at all.
Oh, yeah, of course. He's in this much more than I remembered.
This film, yes.
Yeah, and now every time I see him, I just think of Jane from Serenity.
From
That's
Serenity,
all I can think of.
He doesn't do well in this film, but I think Adam Baldwin is a great actor. I think he does really well, and usually, but in the films he's in. But he's not good in this film as the colonel or whoever he's meant to be, the
captain,
keeper of Area 51, who then has
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't think he does too well, and he's got that moment of like Randy Quaid, your dad's a hero kind of thing at the end.
Yeah. I gotta be honest, you're picking some strange battles here with Will Smith and Adam Baldwin, but keep going for it, man. These are some hot takes for sure.
James Miguel.
Yeah,
Miguel, and his he has watched Point Break way too many times.
He really has. It's interesting because it really does feel like someone else doing an impression of Keanu Reeves in the middle of another movie. But yeah, it doesn't work at all. The whole family, I said Randy Quaid, but the whole family thing they've got going on there, it just doesn't work at all.
No.
Not in the slightest. All right, so facts, I'm sure this film has a bajillion, but we'll handpick a few.
We're gonna whittle these down. So at around 1 hour and 7 minutes, the scene in which Will Smith drags the unconscious alien across the desert was filmed on the salt flats near Great Salt Lake in Utah. Smith's line, "And what the hell is that smell?" was unscripted. Great Salt Lake is home to tiny crustaceans called brine shrimp. When they die, the bodies sink to the bottom of the lake, which isn't very deep, and decompose. When the wind kicks up just right, the bottom mud is disturbed, and the smell of millions of decaying brine shrimp can be very, very bad. Apparently, nobody warned Will.
What the hell is that smell indeed? How could he have possibly guessed?
So I like ridiculous. That. I do like that because you already quoted that line. You said you liked the introduction of him in that and then shouting, "What the hell is that smell?" And the fact that he is so into his scene that comes up as well. Just what is that smell? I think it's good. Yeah,
he's so good in that scene. Look at your ship all banged up. I'm gonna line up all your friends. It feels like they knew what they had in that moment. They just put the camera on him and just like, Will Smith, do Will Smith shit. And yeah, he knocks out the park. I know you're not a fan. But the world, let's be clear, this isn't a Tom Cruise discussion. The world has spoken. The world loves Will Smith. He's an absolute movie star.
Put the camera on him and say, do Will Smith shit. And it's just usually just terrible. It's just, it's not good.
This is not a battle you're going to win. I fear on this one. Like I've lost many a battle. I have lost many a battle on this podcast. I feel like the Will Smith one is. It feels like a safe bet to me.
You know what? I want you to go onto social media after this. I want to see what happens.
We'll do it. I'll put down a Will Smith love or hate thing. I'm just like, geez, it feels like, I don't know, man, like chocolate, love or hate. It feels like it's going to be pretty one-sided. Sorry, that suddenly sounded quite racist, I suppose, Will Smith. But no, it feels like he's universally loved in the same way. It's like Kit Kats. Like, who the fuck doesn't like a Kit Kat? Feels the same thing as who the hell? Tell me you like Kit Kats, man. No. Don't put that hand down, you son of a bitch. All right, get back to the facts.
Dean Devlin said that the most of the dialogue in the scenes Jeff Goldblum shared with Judd Hirsch and Will Smith was improvised. I mean, absolutely, especially Jeff Goldblum and Judd Hirsch, because they're improv comics anyway, I believe. So, like, the improvised line with them is just, I mean, you could wind them up and watch them go.
Yeah, and like you say, like those, I think they're the moments that kind of make the movie work. Because obviously you have the explosions and stuff, but it's having these, like, obviously he was still a star, but they feel like character actors in this film. Yeah. And like the fact that you can have these quiet moments, like that could be a bland, throwaway, forgettable moment where they're playing chess together or he goes to see his father. But those kind of stand up, they're memorable in a different way, but they're just as memorable as any of the explosions you see in this film. Because like you say, you could just watch them do anything. And that's ostensibly what we do. We just watch them sit around. We watch them in a car. We watch them play chess. And I love watching it because it's Judd Hirsch and Jeff Goldblum just being awesome.
Right, so holds a record for most miniature model work to appear in one film. Model shop supervisor Michael Joyce estimated that more miniatures were used for this film than in any other two films combined. Due to the advances in digital technology since the film's release, most experts believe this record may stand forever.
Yeah, I think it will do. Unless somebody decides to go full old school, but I can't see it happening.
Jeff Goldblum uses one of his lines from Jurassic Park, must go faster, faster, must go faster, and is delivered with the same intensity, Yeah,
that's awesome.
I mean, he should try and throw that into most of his films. I think that's a great line.
Especially, an erotic thriller.
Yeah.
Faster, must go faster.
Yeah. The huge hype that the film began generating in early 96 caused Warner Brothers to postpone the release of Mars Attacks. Shit, that was 96 as well. From summer to Christmas. And Steven Spielberg temporarily cancelled his plan to direct War of the Worlds. Oh,
see, that's how big this film was. And again, nobody really knew who Roland Emmerich was. The stars of it were like whatever for you, the average movie-going public member. But it was those trailers, it was those posters where people are like, and again, you've got to remember, this was like just as special effects are starting to kick on. And obviously, we'd seen special effects being incorporated into movies, Jurassic Park and stuff, but nobody had ever seen anything like those ships over like the way they kind of came in and just sat over the major cities of the earth. It was just such a great advertising campaign where you could just have the pictures of the ships over the world. Or more importantly, you could have literally a 5-second movie TV spot where you just have the ship over the White House, it explodes, everyone goes, what the fuck? And then Independence Day coming July 4th. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to see this 7,000 times. And that's what happened.
The film was banned in Lebanon under pressure from Hezbollah because it included scenes where Israeli and Iraqi soldiers joined forces. In the montage where militaries around the world signed on to the US plan to counterattack the alien forces for the last few decades, Lebanon officially boycotts any form of entertainment that features Israelis.
Amazing.
I mean, political
even with the end of the world, they can't work together. Ridiculous.
Dean Devlin wanted the alien invasion to be on a grand scale because he disliked how in the movies, alien invasions always happened in a low-key manner, landing in cornfields in America.
Exactly. We've never seen something like this where they're like, oh, it's just destroying everything. Unbelievable.
I'm going to cut it there because we could just go on forever with...
We could. The only two I've got is... One of the things you may have noticed is when Will Smith gets married to, and I keep forgetting Vivica A. Fox's name in the film, but they have a pretty, let's just say it's a very 1990s wedding ring, and it's 2 dolphins and with like a diamond in the middle. Yeah. And supposedly this film led to a huge increase in the popularity of dolphin-related jewelry. And when you look back, for any of our younger listeners, this was a thing. Dolphins were very popular in the mid to late 90s. But when you see it now, you're like, really? That's the ring you're going for? Jesus Christ, dude, what a shocker. The other one is when, and I had to rewind it and rewatch it.
It was Jasmine, by the way.
What's that?
Jasmine.
Sorry, I just got into the door. Just talk a sec. 1 second. 1 sec. Oh, okay. I got it.
Well, I'm keeping this in mind. Liam going to answer the door during a podcast. Her name was Jasmine, by the way, dudes.
Oh, it's Jasmine. Yeah. Well, anyway, my overriding memory of her character is the fact that Will Smith gave her dolphin jewelry, which is absolutely unforgivable. The final fact is, and you really got to look closely at this, is when Randy Quaid flies up into the ship, so it's about to shoot down, and he flies his ship up, and you see the ship explode. If you look really closely, supposedly they've run out of budget. I'm not sure if I buy into that. But what you actually see at the point of the ship flying into the laser or whatever is it's an upside down version of the Empire State Building exploding. So they just reuse that sequence, but they just kind of supplant it onto the bottom of the ship and use that as the explosion scene. So yeah, when Randy Quaid flies into the alien spaceship, basically what you're seeing is an upside down exploding Empire State Building. And you can see it. It's only there for a split second, but very much there. Absolutely bizarre.
Well, that's budget, or whether it's just reusing because it's an explosion. Just reusing.
I think it's just reusing. Yeah. I can't imagine that they were like, oh, we've just used literally our last pound. And now we've got to just reuse special effects. They're just like, well, no one's going to notice this. And I had never noticed it before until literally I read about it and then looked at it very, very closely. I was like, shit, that is an upside down Empire State Building. We haven't really mentioned the score by David Arnold. This is a guy who did everything from James Bond to a number of Roland Emmerich films and Little Britain, of all things. Okay. But give him the benefit, like, he really does capture the tone perfectly. It's a bit jingoistic at times, but then so is the rest of the movie. But, you know, it's one of those scores which it suits the film perfectly, but doesn't kind of really stick in my mind afterwards. I don't think anybody's going, oh, God, that's my favorite tune from, you know, Independence Day or any of that nonsense. So we'll go straight to our last section, which is video games. There were a number of video games based on Independence Day, but the one I remember, it was actually not a flight simulator. It was like an arcade flight game, but it was released on the PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn. I actually played it on the Sega Saturn, and it's one of those games that I have super fond memories of. And, you know, the scene when you're flying under the ship and you're fighting all the smaller alien ships. And I was like, God, that used to look so good. I had a look at it online. Needless to say, it looks like a Sega Saturn game. So it doesn't look fantastic. But in terms of, it did give me an idea of, if I was going to see basically an Independence Day game made in 2022, what would I want to see? And I would want something like that. But basically, I would want it done by Namco and the Ace Combat team. I'm not sure if you've played the Ace Combat games.
I love Ace Combat, yeah.
Yeah, but those are kind of like, again, air flight simulator / arcade games. But one thing they also had, and I think people forget about, are quite ludicrous storylines. And I think you just basically take the vague outline of Independence Day and just turn it into an air combat simulator made by the Ace Combat team specifically, because those games look amazing. They've got great mechanics. You just add aliens into the mix. I'm absolutely on board, 100%.
For me, it would be Battlefield.
Oh, it's a great show.
Because Battlefield, you can have all right, maybe you don't add it as much in space at the moment, but you can have that where it's a multiplayer map. You can jump into the planes and you can have the dogfighting in the air against the spaceships. But also, maybe this time around, you can have ground attack from the aliens. So
you could even have like a timer, couldn't you? Where, like, on certain missions, you and say the people on your team have to, like, basically achieve a number of objectives, and if you don't, obviously the ship is coming over and then it'll just blow up everything if you don't do the job.
That's it. The NCP would. That's how they would win if it was an NCP. Or
that sounds pretty dope, actually. Can we have both? I quite like both, actually. So
they released a number of Independence Day games. 2 more won't hurt.
Yeah. Battlefield / Independence Day, Ace Combat / Independence Day. I think they're both golden. They could both be DLC. It'd work. It'd totally work. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Was just the ratings and the recommendations.
No, you've missed Legacy, mate. The biggest one.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Legacy! How did I miss Legacy? Yeah, it's a strange one because obviously, again, I think outside of basically any movie not made by James Cameron, this is maybe one of the biggest non-IP related movies of the past 30 years. I don't think that's an exaggeration to say. I'm pretty sure the box office would kind of back that up. It's strange though, isn't it? Because obviously it was very much a movie unto itself and there was talk of a sequel for the longest time. Yeah. But Independence Day Resurrection, it just kind of came and went. I know you obviously have issues with him, but the big loss was Will Smith. I think it would have been a much easier sell.
I do have issues, but it did lose because obviously now, 20 years later? It was released in 2016, so 20 years later to the day, it was released. And it did lose I can't not say it. It did lose the star power of Will Smith. If anything was going to carry that film to maybe possibly give it a sequel. Because that's the problem. Jeff Goldblum has kind of gone on diminishing returns. He's a great actor, but he's not...
He's not box office in the same way.
He's not a draw. He's not... He is great in, again, ensemble pieces, or he's great in like the Avengers where he plays the collector. Not the collector, he plays the games master, the grandmaster, sorry.
Grandmaster.
And he's great in those things, and that's all fantastic, but he is not the guy. You're not going to go, right, I want to see that Jeff Goldblum film. You're really happy that he's coming back for like Jurassic World 19 or whatever it is.
Yeah. But his name's not at the top of the poster.
But as much as I loathe to say it, Will Smith is the draw that people want.
And the thing, I think the big issue is, as I mentioned earlier, for all the ensemble cast, the one name I think most people would associate with this film now is Will Smith. I think, beyond your issues with him, I think if most people said, who stars in Independence Day? If you did like a pointless answer, like he's top. Like, 80% of people are saying Will Smith. 100, that's
I also think that
it's like I think any other actor, Jeff Goldblum included, you could arguably take them out of the sequel and you'd be like, okay, you could still get, but when you're releasing a film and the first thing you're telling everyone is the star from the last film isn't in it, it just doesn't feel as important.
But also, mind, you put Will Smith in the film, it's still a completely fucking shit film. It was terrible from start to finish. You put Will Smith in that film, the only way you could put Will Smith in that film is to be some sort of general that leads his stepson in those space fighter jets. Well, we're not in fucking space fighter jet. We took the technology from the aliens, we retrofitted it to our fighter planes, and we have space fighter planes. Okay, fine. And then it ends. It's like, this film is going to go fantastic, so we're going to set up a sequel. Let's go to the alien planet and let's fuck them up, because all of a sudden another alien is giving us technology to do it. And let's have a weird scene where the scene from Jurassic Park, Jeff Goldblum, you remember this because you were chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex in Jurassic Park. We're going to remove the Tyrannosaurus Rex. We're going to put in a massive alien that looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex chasing a school bus. Yeah, that looks great. Oh, mate, it's every decision we made on that film went from bad to worse to batshit crazy to what the fuck are you thinking?
No, it's a pretty bad film across the board, and I think actually the worst thing about it is, as bad as it is, it's just the fact that it was so forgettable. But I saw it in the cinema, and I was just like, I did. Like you list off a bunch of things there. I'm like, I can't remember any of that. Because the film is fundamentally just forgettable. It's bad, it's forgettable.
I watched it once, and I remember all of that because they're ingrained in my fucking memory.
That's unbelievable you remember all that, because I can remember jack shit. Like, legitimately, I could not explain anything that happens in that film, other than the fact that I'm vaguely aware Jeff Goldblum's in it.
I went to watch it with...
It's a bad sequel.
I went to watch it with frequent collaborator of ours, Dave, and just spent the rest of the night drinking and talking about how shit this film is.
Well, maybe I needed, because I went to see it on my own, because unsurprisingly my wife didn't want to go see it with me. And I think maybe that would be the difference. If I stepped away and kind of torn it to pieces, if I, a like-minded person such as yourself, like if you and I had gone to see it, there's no doubt I would remember so much more, because you and I probably would have gone for a beer and torn it to shreds. And that would be part of the fun. But seeing it on your own, there's no fun, because you just come out and go, oh, that was really rubbish. And then you just forget about it. And it is a problem with these films, like you said, 20 years later. It's very rare you get a sequel 20 years later, something that actually works. And the real test of this, and again, I will never bet against James Cameron, but it'll be really interesting to see whether he can make all 4 of these new Avatar sequels work.
Why are they doing
We're talking, 13 years after the original? I mean,
2009, yeah. And again, I mean... It's not going to come as a shock, because I seem to go against the grain a lot, but I couldn't stand Avatar.
Well, a lot of people kind of retrospectively, considering it was the biggest movie of all time, it doesn't seem to get a lot of love. And I mean, I actually think it's a well-made film. I think it was a fantastic spectacle at the cinema, but I think it was fundamentally well-made.
He ran out of so many ideas. He ran out of ideas, though, didn't he? I know it's not a James Cameron podcast, but he's got he's invented a new language. He's invented aliens. But why are the humans there? They need something that they can't obtain. Why are they there? Unobtainium.
That was a bit of a stinker, admittedly. I mean, like I said, you or anyone else would be insane at this point to bet against James Cameron. Because every time everybody writes him off, he goes and makes goes out and makes the biggest film of all time. That is not an exaggeration. He's done it twice.
It shows like Warner Brothers, isn't it? Because he's releasing 2 this year at Christmas. Mm-hmm. It was being released the same day as Aquaman 2. Yeah. Warner Brothers have turned around and said, no, we'll save Aquaman. So we're going to move Aquaman to 2003, but we're going to move Shazam 2 to go against Avatar 2. Like, they have no hope for Shazam 2, do they? They're just going fucking...
I mean, I guess they're hoping for a different crowd.
They just sent poor Zachary Levi on his fucking deathbed. Off you go. You go again. Because... Like you, I'm a fan of Avatar, but I wouldn't bet against Cameron, because people are going to go watch this pile of shit.
100%. And make no mistake, I get it from their perspective. like Aquaman, you're going to get a lot of wide shots. They're introducing these kind of new worlds and stuff like that. And there's there's going to be a lot of in Avatar 2, water. Like that is one of the big things that they're kind of pushing in this, is the technology of shooting underwater. Yeah. And of course, Aquaman is going to go up against that. And I'll tell you one thing, regardless of whether you like Avatar or not, is Aquaman will not look as good as James Cameron's film. You can take that to the bank right now. If nothing else, Avatar 2 will look absolutely phenomenal. And they've looked at that and go, dude, we cannot have a water-based movie going up directly against Avatar when so much of it is set underwater. Because you're going to have the two trailers running at the same time, and one's just going to look light years ahead of the other. And the one light years ahead will be Avatar. We are just talking about James Cameron Avatar now. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there anyway.
Yeah, let's score and recommend. Shall we? Let's move on to score and recommend.
Okay, I think I've said earlier already, a bit of a spoiler alert, that I thought this was a 5-star experience when I went to see it initially. But I'm going to settle, because like I said, I think it was a 5-star experience. I think it's a 3-star film, so I'm going to settle on 4 stars. And I recommend it sounds weird because I feel like everyone's seen this film. But if you hadn't seen Independence Day, I would still say to this day, it's a really fun, biggest budget B movie. B-movies are B-movies for a reason. Usually they don't have that budget. This is a B-movie concept with $200 million attached to it. So yeah, absolutely go and see it, because there's not many movies like it. And it is good. It is good.
So it loses 2 stars because of Will Smith. It gains some stars because of Judge Hirsch and Jeff Goldblum. And the way it looks and everything. It's 3. I mean, it is a good film. It is enjoyable to watch. I mean, so it is a 3-star film. It's done really well. I mean, it still holds up, the graphics wise, the effects wise, things like that. So I did enjoy the rewatch. I really did. I'm glad we're
on the same page for most things. Basically, that's -1 star for Will Smith. That is basically how I really like Will Smith in this. 4 stars. You don't like Will Smith in this. 3 stars. Makes perfect sense.
And yes, again, I can't imagine anyone who hasn't seen this film. So if you haven't, yes, definitely watch it. But
it's fun. If nothing else, it's totally fun. And there's still nothing quite like that movie when the ships finally align and they blow everything to smithereens. It still looks fantastic. It looks great. Like I said, the film never quite recovers from it because it can never quite match that moment. But for that, even if you just watch up to the point, because I think this film is legitimately exceptional up until the point that everything gets blown to smithereens, and then it kind of, it's a bit hit and miss after that, but it's worth it. Just that watch the first hour, you'll have a great time.
Right. So I'm pausing.
Next week
I'm going to pause.
Okay, so all that's left is what we're doing next week. What are we going for? It's your choice, I think.
Well, I mean, you've mentioned Roland Emmerich now, and we found out that he directed the fantastic
the enjoyable Universal Soldier.
Universal Soldier. So at some point, that is going to be on my list. But I think we'll give Roland Emmerich a break for a minute, and we'll go into 4 pizza-loving amphibians who are raised by a rat who knows ninjutsu, teaming up against a man who loves wearing metal.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one, because obviously Independence Day was massive, but again, this was huge in our youth.
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was massive. And I've got it in my mind that it was still, until recently at least, it was the biggest grossing independent movie of all time.
That's what's insane. Which is insane. Independent film that was released. Look at, I say some of the actors in there. Obviously, you had the voices of like Corey Feldman. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Corey Feldman.
Yeah, but the names are irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like in 1990, the early 90s, it was one of the biggest IPs in the world. Like trying to get your hands on the toys, everything about it was absolutely huge. And when someone told me it was like an independent film, I was like, how the fuck was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles an independent film? I don't know. But what we will do is we'll do the research so that when you come and listen to this podcast next week, we will have the answers for you. So yes, thank you for listening to Independence Day.
Spoiler alert.
Please do join us next week.
Sorry, spoiler alert. If you are watching this film, please look out for a Hey You Guys favourite, Sam Rockwell, a very young Sam Rockwell.
Oh, I forgot he was in that.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to this one because I've legitimately not seen it for over 20 years. So it's going to be interesting to see how this holds up. But this is a massive film for both of our youths.
Yeah. So, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. We're also on email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing. Thanks for that, mate.
Cheers, Darry.
Yeah. And thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye.